However, I do believe that arguably one of the most far-reaching and damaging affront to India was the deliberate manipulation of history, which began under Prime Minister Nehru's regime and became a de facto policy under successive Congress governments. And a couple of examples should hopefully illustrate this point. The first is the appointment of Maulana Abul Kalam Azad as India's first education minister. Now, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad is often portrayed as an intellectual and a national hero. But if you listen to some of his views, it was such that they would even sometimes put Owaisi to shame. He was a man who very strongly believed in the concept of the Muslim Ummah or the Muslim Brotherhood above everything else. He said, and I quote, "It is possible for a father to turn against his son, not impossible that a mother separates a child from her lap. It is possible that one brother becomes the enemy of another brother. But the relationship that a Chinese Muslim has with an African Muslim, an Arab Bedouin with a Tatar shepherd, and which binds in one soul a neo-Muslim of India with the right descendant Qureshi of Mecca, there is no power on earth to break it and to cut off this chain." Maulana Azad also, some people might not know, was a massive supporter of the Islamist Khilafat movement. He said in its support, and I quote, "If even a grain of the soul of Islam is alive among its followers, then I should say that if a thorn gets stuck in a Turk's soul on the battlefield of war, then I swear by the God of Islam, no Muslim of India can be a Muslim until he feels that prick in his heart instead of soul, because the Millat-e-Islam or the global Muslim community is a single body." So this is our first education minister who believed that if any Muslim is not completely and utterly involved in the Khilafat movement, then he is not a true Muslim. Then he is not a patriotic Muslim. Then he's not a real Muslim. And the reason, which is interesting, if you look at some of the other opinions that the Maulana gave, it becomes apparent that the Maulana opposed the partition of India was not because he wanted a united, strong India. It almost seemed like he believed that the Islamic conquest of India is incomplete and a partition would slow down the process. He said, and I quote, "By demanding Pakistan, we are turning our eyes away from the history of the last 1,000 years, and if I may use the League terminology, throwing more than 30 million Muslims into the lap of Hindu Raj." It appears that he is still lamenting the yet incomplete Islamic conquest of pagan India. And to give someone with such views the charge of designing and implementing India's historical educational program is a bit, and expecting a fair representation of history, is a bit like putting a fox in a chicken coop and expecting all the hens to live long, healthy, happy lives. It was such a bad decision that even Mahatma Gandhi, who at this point we all know bent over backwards to appease the Muslim community on many occasions, even he wrote to Prime Minister Nehru saying, quote, "Advise him not to make Maulana Azad the education minister, as he was convinced that the Maulana would ruin Indian education." This is coming from Mahatma Gandhi himself. And to reiterate the point made by Dr. Conrad Elst earlier, Maulana Azad saw to it that the history of India presented in the textbook was again negationist. That is, cover up the deeds perpetrated by Muslim invaders and settlers and converts, the loot, the slaughter, the destruction of temples, the jizya tax, the forced conversions, the forcing widows of dead soldiers into harems, sale of captured children in the slave bazaars of Baghdad, burning of libraries and appropriation of defeated people's properties to constitute waqf for the welfare of Muslims and Muslims exclusively. A systematic attempt was put in place to dismiss any good standard or unbiased standard of scholarship by couching it in terms like, quote, "This knowledge is archaic and useless for our modern times of today," or, quote, "It creates a division in Indian society and hurts our communal harmony." I'm sure a lot of you have heard sentiments very similar to this echoed all over social media in the last 10 years as well.